So tell your dead mama dig her ass up and post a picture that look better than my motherfucking mama.
That was King Harris, speaking boldly and without restraint just weeks ago. Now, by all accounts, he is pleading. The very man he publicly mocked, 50 Cent, is reportedly developing a documentary that could fundamentally destabilize the Harris family. And if even a fraction of the rumored content proves accurate, King may come to regret every word he uttered. In early March 2026, reports began to surface indicating that 50 Cent was developing a documentary project tentatively titled Surviving T.I and Tiny. Prior to those reports emerging, King Harris had positioned himself as one of the most aggressive voices in the ongoing feud with 50 Cent. He released videos, recorded diss tracks, produced branded merchandise, including custom t-shirts, and even launched a cannabis product, all explicitly targeting 50 Cent. None of it was subtle. None of it was measured. To understand how and why King Harris transitioned so rapidly from a posture of attack to one of apparent desperation, it is essential to examine what he actually said and did before the documentary entered the conversation. Because what King did was not a conventional hip-hop response. It was deeply personal, crossing boundaries that most figures in the culture consider sacrosanct.
Your mama dead is dig that up. How y'all raised? I'm not raised like that.
That is King Harris in a video that went viral, a direct response to 50 Cent after the mogul posted an unflattering photograph of King's mother, Tamika "Tiny" Harris, on social media. King did not exercise restraint. He went directly after 50 Cent's late mother, Sabrina Jackson, who tragically died in a house fire when 50 Cent was only 8 years old.
I'm not going about my mama, nigga. I'm not going.
King repeatedly emphasized that he would not tolerate anyone disrespecting his mother. However, in mounting that defense, he disrespected the mother of another man, a woman who is deceased and therefore unable to respond. That distinction is critical because it is precisely what turned public sentiment against him and what prompted 50 Cent to escalate the conflict to an entirely different level.
Tell your dead mama dig her ass up and post a picture that look better than my mother.
King did not confine his response to a single video. He wore a t-shirt bearing Sabrina Jackson's image. He launched a cannabis strain marketed as Ms. Jackpack, with packaging that featured her likeness. He released diss tracks, including one titled Drop Top, containing lyrics such as, "You were made from 50 cents because your mama gave it cheap." Public reaction was divided. Some viewed a young man standing in defense of his family. The majority, however, saw a 21-year-old mocking a deceased woman for the sake of internet notoriety. And 50 Cent, a man who has constructed an entire secondary career on the foundation of calculated, patient retribution, took careful note of every single move. The internet responded predictably. Screenshots were archived. Videos were reposted and dissected. Commentary channels analyzed every word King spoke, every product he launched, every lyric he recorded. All of that content created a permanent, indelible record, one that could not be deleted, retracted, or adequately explained away. And that record would prove consequential, because when the documentary rumors surfaced, King's actions were no longer merely recollections. They constituted evidence of provocation. They provided the justification 50 Cent could cite when questioned about why he would direct his considerable resources against a 21-year-old. When the documentary rumors emerged, the narrative practically wrote itself. King had overreached, and now 50 Cent possessed the instrument to conclude the conversation definitively. His visible lack of composure was, in retrospect, entirely predictable. His desire to see that documentary disappear is understandable to anyone who has been following this situation closely. And to fully appreciate why, we must trace this conflict back to its origins, long before King Harris was old enough to choose a side. This feud did not originate with King Harris. It did not begin with diss tracks, Instagram posts, or documentary announcements. It began with two men who ascended to the pinnacle of hip-hop in the same year, from opposite ends of the country, and spent 2 decades in a state of quiet, unresolved tension. In 2003, 50 Cent released Get Rich or Die Tryin', an album constructed around the narrative of surviving 9 gunshot wounds and fighting his way out of Queens, New York. That same year, T.I. released Trap Music, The album that helped define an entire subgenre of Southern rap and solidified his self-proclaimed title as the King of the South. Both men moved millions of units. Both commanded fierce regional loyalty. And both existed within a hip-hop ecosystem where competition between New York and the South was not merely cultural, it was structural. Album sales, radio placement, award nominations, all of it fueled a rivalry that never needed to be articulated aloud to be palpable. For years, the tension between 50 Cent and T.I. remained beneath the surface. There were no diss records, no public confrontations, simply two elite artists occupying the same space with enough mutual respect or mutual indifference to maintain civility. That dynamic shifted around 2020 when the Versus Battle series emerged during the pandemic, created by Swizz Beatz and Timbaland. Versus placed legendary artists against one another in live-streamed catalog showcases, and T.I. began publicly campaigning for a matchup against 50 Cent. He drew comparisons to the 2007 sales competition between 50 Cent's Curtis and Kanye West's Graduation, a showdown 50 famously lost and subsequently cited as a reason to step back from music temporarily. T.I. argued that he possessed the catalog, the hits, and the cultural significance to compete directly. He made his case on every available platform: podcasts, radio interviews, Instagram live sessions, painting the picture of a matchup he believed the culture deserved. But 50 Cent refused. Repeatedly. On Instagram, on podcasts, in interviews, he stated that he had moved beyond that kind of engagement. He pointed to his television empire, specifically the Power franchise on Starz, as evidence that he was operating on an entirely different plane. Music battles, he implied, were beneath him. That rejection carried weight, and the manner of its delivery carried even more. 50 Cent did not simply decline, he dismissed. He treated the request as though it were beneath consideration, as though T.I. were seeking a seat at a table he had not earned. For an artist who had spent 2 decades positioning himself as hip-hop royalty from the South, that dismissal was profoundly personal. T.I. interpreted it not as disinterest, but as a combination of fear and disrespect. The back and forth continued through sporadic online exchanges, enough to keep the animosity alive, but insufficient to constitute a full-scale conflict. That equilibrium held for years. Then February 2026 arrived, and the equilibrium shattered. T.I. appeared on Shannon Sharpe's Nightcap podcast and accused 50 Cent of cowardice, claiming that behind-the-scenes conversations had revealed 50's initial willingness to participate in a Versus, only for him to withdraw publicly. To underscore the point, T.I. released a diss track titled Let Him Know, filmed on location in New York City, 50 Cent's home territory, with lyrics targeting 50's age, his pivot to acting, and what T.I. characterized as inconsistencies in 50's persona as a street-hardened figure. 50 Cent's response was not musical. Instead, he shared a resurfaced clip from a 2003 legal incident that implied T.I. had cooperated with law enforcement, effectively branding him a snitch. In hip-hop, that designation carries consequences that extend far beyond mere insult. It attacks a person's authenticity, their credibility, their entire foundational narrative. And with that single strategic maneuver, 50 Cent redirected the conflict from a debate about catalog superiority to a referendum on T.I.'s character. That is the ground from which everything else grew. The family involvement, the diss tracks, the references to a dead mother, the documentary. All of it traces back to this pivotal moment. The moment the feud ceased being about music and became about reputation. Once that threshold was crossed, there was no return to benign competition. This had become a war over who could inflict the most enduring damage. For 50 Cent, a man who had already dismantled careers through methodical media campaigns, the tools at his disposal vastly outweighed anything T.I. or his family could assemble. T.I. had bars. 50 Cent had a production company. That fundamental asymmetry would define everything that followed. And the first member of T.I.'s family to step into that fire without fully comprehending its intensity was his son, King Harris. The feud between 50 Cent and T.I. was already deeply personal before King Harris entered the fray. But King's involvement transformed it from a two-man standoff into something that consumed an entire household and played out across every social media platform simultaneously. King Harris, born August 25, 2004, grew up in the public eye. He appeared on the VH1 reality series T.I and Tiny, The Family Hustle, which aired from 2011 to 2017 and documented the daily life of the Harris family. By the time the 50 Cent conflict escalated, King was 21 years old enough to make his own decisions, young enough to make impulsive ones. He had already cultivated a reputation for being outspoken through viral moments on the show, including heated exchanges with his parents that demonstrated a willingness to speak his mind irrespective of consequences. The specific catalyst that drew King into the conflict was 50 Cent's decision to post an unflattering photograph of Tiny Harris on Instagram during one of his exchanges with T.I. That act crossed a definitive boundary. Targeting a man's wife, particularly on a public platform with millions of followers, moved the confrontation from the realm of professional rivalry into domestic territory. The Harris family responded collectively. King and his older brother, Domani, rallied immediately. But where Domani's responses maintained a degree of restraint, King's were volatile and unrelenting. His video attacking 50 Cent's late mother spread across the internet within hours. The language was raw, the intent unmistakable, and the public reaction was enormous. King repeated the same message throughout the video. He wanted it heard, he wanted it to wound. And for a brief moment, it did generate significant attention. But the attention was not the kind that advances a career. It was the kind that creates a target. Beyond the video, King escalated further. The t-shirt, the cannabis strain, the diss tracks. The Harris family collectively released approximately 6 diss records aimed at 50 Cent. King's contributions included Drop Top and additional tracks that took direct aim at 50's personal history. Domani added his own verses. T.I himself released multiple tracks boasting about his discography and mocking 50's transition to Hollywood. T.I addressed the situation publicly, offering a complex perspective on his son's involvement. He stated that while he did not relish seeing them drawn into negativity, he respected their loyalty. He described their willingness to defend the family with the phrase, "My kids ride now," meaning they were prepared to stand and fight when the family was under attack. It was the kind of statement that resonated within hip-hop culture, where familial loyalty is regarded as sacred. But it also functioned as a tacit endorsement of King's conduct that was rapidly alienating the very audience King needed to build a viable career. The problem was structural. King was waging a battle that demanded restraint, and restraint was not part of his repertoire. Every escalation, another video, another product, another track, provided 50 Cent with additional material without extracting any concession in return. 50 Cent had no need to respond, because King was inflicting the damage upon himself. Each new provocation made King appear more reckless and rendered 50 Cent's eventual response, whatever form it might assume, appear more justified.
What's my mama? Like your mama ain't dead. Go put some flowers on that grave.
Lines like those drew widespread condemnation across the internet. The prevailing consensus among commentators was that King had gone too far. Mocking a deceased woman, regardless of what may have provoked it, was viewed as fundamentally distinct from exchanging insults with a living adversary. And King, at 21, was punching upward at a 50-year-old media mogul who had spent decades perfecting the art of the long game. Meanwhile, 50 Cent barely engaged on a musical level. He posted memes. He shared cryptic captions on Instagram. He released a promotional single for his Power Origin series containing a line widely interpreted as a warning, "Oh, they are going to learn to leave me alone." The disparity was striking. The Harris family was flooding every available channel with content, while 50 Cent was barely lifting a finger, opting instead to allow anticipation to perform the work on his behalf. That restraint was not incidental. 50 Cent has operated according to this methodology for decades, absorbing attacks, cataloging insults, and waiting for the optimal moment to respond with something disproportionate. He employed this approach with Ja Rule. He employed it with Rick Ross. The pattern is invariably the same. Allow the opposing side to overextend, then respond with something they cannot match. In this instance, the response would not take the form of a verse or a social media post. It would be a documentary, a piece of long-form content engineered not to win a single news cycle, but to permanently reshape a narrative. If diss tracks are bullets in a rap feud, a documentary is an airstrike. And 50 Cent, a man who had already demonstrated what a strategically timed exposé could accomplish, signaled in early March 2026 that he was loading the payload. Rumors of a documentary tentatively titled Surviving T.I and Tiny began circulating shortly after the family's diss tracks reached their peak. The title was a deliberate echo of Surviving R. Kelly, the docuseries that played an instrumental role in reshaping public perception of R. Kelly and contributed to the legal reckoning he ultimately faced. By naming his project within that same tradition, 50 Cent was making a statement before a single frame of footage had aired. This was not intended as a recap of a rap beef. This was positioned as an indictment. 50 Cent fueled the speculation personally. He posted a since-deleted Instagram screenshot from a radio station article about the documentary, accompanied by a caption that read, "Remember how quiet I got before the documentary? Dame thought I wasn't coming. I hope this doesn't mess up your promo tour. They're going to ask about your 20 sexual assault cases. You might want to talk to a crisis PR person." The implications were unmistakable. 50 Cent had previously demonstrated his capacity to take existing allegations and public rumors, package them into polished productions, and transform them into cultural events that permanently redefined public perception of their subjects. He was drawing a direct line. He had executed this strategy before, he had executed it effectively, and now he was preparing to execute it again. The reference to 20 sexual assault cases pointed directly at allegations that had trailed T.I and Tiny since 2021, making the documentary's intended focus unambiguous. Those allegations were serious. Beginning in 2021, over a dozen women came forward with claims of sexual assault, drugging, and coercion against T.I and Tiny. The initial wave was amplified by a former associate named Sabrina Peterson, who shared anonymous accounts on Instagram describing scenarios in which victims alleged they had been drugged at parties and subsequently subjected to non-consensual acts. Additional lawsuits followed, including one filed as recently as 2024. However, the majority of these cases were dismissed on procedural grounds, such as statutes of limitations. There have been no convictions. T.I and Tiny have denied all allegations, maintaining that any activities in their private life involved consenting adults. But a documentary does not require a conviction to inflict damage. What it requires is a narrative, a structured, produced, carefully edited retelling that organizes scattered allegations into a cohesive story arc. And 50 Cent, with his production infrastructure and media reach, possessed the resources to construct precisely that. The precedent had already been established. Surviving R. Kelly did not single-handedly produce R. Kelly's conviction, but it shifted public opinion so dramatically that it cultivated an environment in which legal action became virtually inevitable. 50 Cent was applying the identical playbook. For T.I, the stakes were enormous. He had constructed a post-music career around his identity as a community leader, a businessman, a philanthropist, and a family man. His trap music museum, his real estate ventures, his public speaking engagements, all of it depended upon a carefully maintained public image. A documentary that resurfaced the assault allegations in primetime packaging could unravel partnerships, trigger boycotts, and fundamentally redefine his legacy in the public consciousness. For King, the implications were equally severe. His nascent music career was built entirely upon his surname. Everything he possessed, the connections, the platform, the name recognition, derived from being T.I.'s son. A documentary that inflicted damage upon the Harris brand would damage him by direct association, creating obstacles that no diss track or viral video could surmount. Record labels reconsider signing artists entangled in scandal. Collaborators create distance. Streaming playlists are curated with controversy factored into the equation. The cascading effects of a successful documentary would touch every dimension of King's professional life at the precise moment he was attempting to establish himself as an independent artist. And there was a cruel irony embedded in the situation. King's entire participation in the feud, the videos, the merchandise, the tracks, had been motivated by a desire to defend and elevate his family's name. But those very actions had furnished 50 Cent with additional ammunition. Every clip of King disrespecting 50's mother could be incorporated into a documentary as evidence of the Harris family's character. Every diss track lyric could be quoted and contextualized. King's defense of his family had inadvertently become a weapon deployed against them. Reports from industry insiders described T.I. as reportedly devastated by alleged early leaks. Gossip channels extended that narrative to include King, portraying him as a young man who had spoken his way into a confrontation he could not sustain and was now searching for an exit. Whether King actually reached out to 50 Cent directly remains unverified, but the underlying logic is sound. The documentary represented consequences operating on an entirely different magnitude from anything King had encountered in the course of the feud. King Harris, who was among the most vocal participants in the conflict just weeks earlier, has grown noticeably quieter. The deluge of diss tracks has subsided. The provocative merchandise and cannabis branding have receded from public discourse. Whether that silence is the product of a direct appeal to 50 Cent, counsel from family or management, or simply the natural de-escalation of a situation that spiraled beyond control is something only King and his inner circle can confirm. T.I., for his part, has not retreated. He responded to the documentary rumors with defiance, challenging 50 Cent to compete in any medium, including doc for doc, a statement suggesting either genuine confidence about what the project might contain or a strategic projection of strength designed to control the narrative. Given T.I.'s history of legal adversity, including federal weapons charges that resulted in incarceration, and his extensive experience navigating public crises, it is plausible that he views the documentary threat as manageable. But manageable for a veteran artist with decades of crisis experience is a fundamentally different proposition than manageable for his 21-year-old son. Mama, listened your mama. That was King just weeks ago. Confident, aggressive, certain that the Harris family name carried sufficient weight to absorb whatever 50 Cent could deliver. But a diss track and a documentary operate on profoundly different timelines and at profoundly different scales. A diss track survives for a news cycle. A documentary resides on a streaming platform. It is shared, discussed, cited in articles, referenced in legal proceedings, and revisited in conversations for years. King may have been prepared for a street fight. He was not prepared for a media war against someone who builds media empires for a living. Public reactions across platforms such as X and Reddit have been sharply divided. Some applaud 50 Cent for his calculated patience, viewing the documentary threat as the definitive checkmate in a conflict he never needed to win through music. Others have criticized the entire dynamic, a 50-year-old media mogul with a production deal and millions of followers locked in a public conflict with a 21-year-old whose primary platform is Instagram. The age disparity, the power disparity, the resource disparity, all of it raises legitimate questions about proportionality. Even among those who believe King brought the situation upon himself, a separate conversation is taking place about what this feud reveals about hip-hop in 2026. The genre has always rewarded aggression. It has always celebrated the artist who refuses to yield, who matches energy with energy, who treats every slight as a declaration of war. But the landscape has shifted. The artists who dominate today are not merely musicians. They are brands, content creators, and media executives. And the instruments available to them extend far beyond microphones and mixing consoles. A documentary can accomplish what 100 diss tracks cannot: reshape a person's public identity in a manner that follows them for the remainder of their career. That is the arena King Harris entered when he began posting videos about 50 Cent's mother. He was operating under old rules in an entirely new game. There is also the question of 50 Cent's own motivations. The documentary, if it materializes, serves multiple purposes beyond the immediate conflict. It generates content for his production company. It maintains his presence in the news cycle. It reinforces his brand as someone who should never be provoked. 50 Cent has transformed personal grudges into a business model. And the T.I. documentary, whether it ultimately airs or not, has already fulfilled its primary function as a deterrent. The threat alone altered the dynamics of the feud. The mere suggestion of the project's existence was sufficient to shift the balance of power entirely. That is the nature of the weapon. It does not need to be deployed to be effective. And for King Harris, the lesson may be the most difficult one available in the entertainment industry. It is not the person who speaks the loudest who prevails. It is the person who possesses the greatest leverage. King had words. 50 Cent has a production company, a distribution network, and an established track record of converting personal vendettas into profitable content. The reported plea for mercy, if it occurred, was not a sign of weakness. It was a sign that King had finally grasped the scale of the arena he had entered, and that understanding may have arrived too late to reverse what was already set in motion. That concludes this segment. For additional content, please refer to the selections available on your screen.